The International Space Station operates in an environment where outside temperatures can reach 120 degrees Celsius. To keep the crew from literally cooking alive, the station relies on a highly specialized temperature and humidity control system. If the software running that setup fails, the astronauts die. Back on Earth, the Pentagon houses the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, or DTRA. Their entire job is to analyze and neutralize the absolute worst-case scenarios for the United States, specifically potential attacks involving nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. Both of these networks are heavily fortified, critical pieces of government infrastructure, and yet, in 1999, an outsider successfully broke into both of them. The culprit was a 15-year-old kid in a Florida bedroom. How does a teenager outsmart the brightest security minds in the government? And why did the reputation he built by doing it eventually cost him his life? By the age of 6, Jonathan James was completely obsessed with computers. His father, a programmer himself, got worried about how much time his son spent inside and installed parental controls on the family PC. But Jonathan easily broke right through them. Nobody asked him to study code, but one afternoon he uninstalled Windows from his family's computer and loaded up Linux. He started reading thick manuals on the C programming language and the Unix operating system, spending countless hours late into the night talking to other computer enthusiasts online. In those circles, he started going by the alias Comrade. He didn't want to steal data, delete files, or spread viruses. Hacking was simply a puzzle. He loved the intellectual thrill of taking on the toughest systems and proving they had weak points. After breaking into a network, he would often send a polite little email to the system administrator, pointing out exactly where their setup had holes and offering advice on how to fix it. In the summer of 1999, Jonathan wanted a new challenge. He decided to target NASA, successfully bypassing security to gain access to 13 different computers at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama. This time, he actually took something. He downloaded the software that controlled the International Space Station's temperature and humidity systems, proprietary code valued by the government at $1.7 million. Jonathan later explained he only took it because he was teaching himself C programming, and he figured the best way to learn was by reading code written by the government. NASA treated the situation as a massive security crisis. When they discovered the breach, they shut down their entire system for 3 weeks to secure it, racking up about $40,000 in damages. 2 months later, Jonathan took his hobby to the Pentagon. He somehow broke into the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, installed a backdoor, and intercepted over 3,300 messages between staff members. Along the way, he scooped up usernames and passwords for military employees. There was a massive disconnect in how this event was viewed. In Jonathan's mind, it was harmless exploration. To the United States government, an unknown entity had just compromised the security of their space stations and nuclear defense networks. At 6 a.m. in January 2000, Jonathan woke up to his mother telling him the FBI was at the door. Armed agents raided his home and confiscated 5 computers, his CDs, a Palm Pilot, and even a Star Trek book for good measure. He admitted everything to the authorities and promised to stop. A few months later, the authorities formally pressed charges. Jonathan became the youngest person ever convicted of violating U.S. cybercrime laws. After a probation violation, the court sent him to a juvenile detention facility for 6 months. He spent that time terrified of the older inmates, and his father later said Jonathan left that facility a different person, unusually passive and, as he put it, strangely idle. The justice system took a teenager with a rare talent and decided to make a very public example out of him. By turning his trial into a media event, they ensured that his name would be permanently linked to high-profile cybercrime. While Jonathan's life was derailing, another self-taught hacker was just getting started. Albert Gonzalez didn't hack to solve puzzles or study code. He did it purely to get rich. Gonzalez got involved with an online marketplace for stolen data called the Shadow Crew. They specialized in a technique called war driving. They would sit in the parking lots outside of retail stores with a laptop and a high-powered antenna, break into the company's poorly secured Wi-Fi, and install software to siphon off customer credit card data. This chart compares a typical bank robbery to what Gonzalez's crew achieved. They targeted retailers like the TJX companies, parent brand of TJ Maxx. Through war driving, they stole data of 180 million cards, causing roughly $400 million in damages. The most surprising part of the TJX heist is that while Gonzalez was orchestrating the largest identity theft in American history, he was also on the payroll of the United States Secret Service, working as an informant to bust other hackers. Fast forward to May 2008. Jonathan James is now 24 years old. He's completely retired from hacking, dealing with depression after the loss of his mother, and living a quiet, withdrawn life with his brother in Florida. Then the Secret Service showed up at his door. They raided his house looking for an accomplice of the Shadow Crew, identified in their reports only as JJ. Because Jonathan had such a high-profile record, the agents assumed he was their guy. While reviewing his subpoena, Jonathan recognized the name of a fellow hacker, Albert Gonzalez. He knew Gonzalez online as the Soup Nazi, and the paperwork revealed that this man had been a secret informant for the government for years. Jonathan realized he was being outmaneuvered. He believed Gonzalez was pinning the corporate hacks on others to protect himself, and that a famous target like Comrade was too tempting for federal prosecutors to ignore. He was terrified. He knew the system played dirty, and he refused to go back into a federal cell for a crime he had absolutely nothing to do with. 2 weeks after the raid, Jonathan took his own life. In his note, he wrote he lost control over the situation, and sitting in jail for 20 years wasn't winning. He wrote, "I die free." The bitter irony of the situation is that the hacker known as JJ was likely a completely different person, another associate of Gonzalez named Stephen Watt. The decision to make a public example of him meant that for the rest of his life, his name stayed at the top of every investigative list. Jonathan James was a brilliant, curious kid who needed a mentor. Instead, the heavy-handedness of the law ensured that the most dangerous thing about him was his own history.